What's up, YouTube? We got a discussion to do today. This is the 3 types of yo-yo brands that I generally review. So, this is sort of going to be how I approach different yo-yo brands when I review their yo-yos. So let's get right into it. Now, sort of the first tier I wanted to talk about is kind of your very budget, cheapy, low-end, sub $30 yo-yos and the brands that mass produce them. Very often these are machine shops in China that produce them. The first one that comes to mind is Magic Yo-Yo, of course. Magic Yo-Yo tends to do the best budget metals, and Magic Yo-Yo is actually starting to move into the next tier of that core mid-level solid smooth yo-yos. They got their start doing like mass-produced budget stuff, and for the price it's pretty good. At least the Magic Yo-Yo stuff is. You know, usually for $10 to $15 you get a yo-yo that plays pretty well. It's maybe not on the cutting edge of design, but it spins good, and minimal vibe. Really have pretty okay finishes. The N12 Shark Honor does anyway. Some diamonds in the rough for sure. The N12 Shark Honor is actually pretty good. But you know, there's some that are like, well, for the $7 to $10 that you spend on it, I'm thinking like, you know, the N5 Desperado for like, you know, the couple of bucks that you spend on them. They're not bad, but they're not like something that you're going to be excited to play. But if you're on a super budget and you just want to play yo-yo, they're not terrible for that. Now, there are a few, and these can be hit and miss. There are a few yo-yos that are just really bad. Talked about these before, but like, you know, the Bibu God of Death, the Sidekick Pro from Caleb USA. A lot of those are just really crappy, and, you know, they're a waste of money. They're not like, you know, oh man, good bang for your buck. I get a yo-yo that works for not much money. They're kind of a waste of money, and just generally not very good playing yo-yos. But that's what reviews are for. It's what YouTube's for. It's what forums are for. Facebook groups. You know, ask about the budget metals. If they're Magic Yo-Yo, generally you're probably going to be okay, especially if it's a newer one like the Node or something. I don't have a Node, but everybody that has one seems to think it's great. You know, Vosoon comes to mind, the Vanquish. Although Vosoon and like Top Yo, that starts to like blur the line from like budget to like the budget mass-produced stuff to like almost mid-range, like core type stuff. If I review it, I'm gonna kind of just try to tell you whether or not it's a decent yo-yo or not. Like the N12 Shark's Honor, certainly a great yo-yo, and you know, if you have one to beat up, is it on the cutting edge of design and the most interesting and most fun yo-yo you'll ever play with? No. But can you have fun with it because it'll do yo-yo tricks and spin a long time for you? Yes, absolutely. So, you know, stuff like that, I'll try to compare it and say, you know, like the N12, it's, you know, for 12 bucks, it's great to have. Or, you know, like the Bibu God of Death, like, it's really just kind of a waste of your $12. So, you know, that's sort of how I try to approach those budget brands. You know, like I said, think Aldi, Magic Yo-Yo, Vosoon, maybe Yo-Yo Officer. Some of the like lower priced ones, Vosoon, Yo-Yo Officer, Magic Yo-Yo start to like build into the mid-level tier, but there's a lot of like just budget stuff that they have in their range as well that you know, can be worthwhile, and you know, that's kind of where we need to like sort of sift out the bad from the good. I feel like if something's bad, I'm going to try to do a better job, especially if it's a budget, like, cheapy yo-yo, to be like, this is not good, don't buy this, spend a few more dollars. So, that's sort of the first category, first tier of yo-yo brands that I tend to review. Now, moving into it, the next tier is sort of your core brands. Like I said, Magic Yo-Yo is starting to move up there, same thing with Yo-Yo Officer, Vosoon. I actually think that those companies, and maybe, you know, Top Yo as well, I think that those companies actually do a lot of the machining for the mid-tier brands, but because they own the machine shops, they're able to sell yo-yos at a lower price. Now, the more core brands like Yo-Yo Factory is a great example, as like they are like the core brand. Their newest yo-yos are always on the cutting edge of design. Their yo-yos are designed better than you know, Magic Yo-Yos or Aldi or you know, yo-yos like that. In my opinion, they're designed better. They generally have a better design. They usually come with a better bearing. The center track, the center track bearings, or the CTX bearing, depending on the model. And usually the best Yoyo factories, and Duncan also fits into this category. They're sort of the core brands. The best Yoyos from these brands are usually their signature editions for their players. They sponsor big teams. They sell a lot of Yoyos. They make a lot of Yoyos, and they have Yoyo players who they sponsor who play these Yoyos and who have helped design these Yoyos based around their style so that they can compete with them. So I would say that's sort of the core brand, and that's, I feel like, really where a lot of the innovation in design tends to spring from. I feel like Yoyo Factory particularly tries to really like be on the cutting edge as best as they possibly can. Now that's not to say they're the only ones. They're not. But I feel like they do a really good job, and because they're sort of a core brand, they're big. They have a lot of help. They have a lot of players who are able to test Yoyos, give their opinions and what have you. Now you're going to pay a little bit more for these. These usually hit about the $50 range, but you get more interesting designs. You get Yoyos that are sort of more on the cutting edge of what's going on in Yoyo competition. I feel like Recess also sort of falls into this category, although they cost a little bit more. They're sort of they're the gray line of like between core and higher end, but they have some more budgety stuff as well that sort of puts them into this like core brand category. So it's really the brands that in the core that are kind of on the cutting edge of Yoyo design, but are also still pretty affordable. Every new one that comes out is going to sort of be new, improved, kind of on the cutting edge of what's going on right now with Yoyo players and Yoyo teams and what have you. So, definitely something you want to look at there as far as a core brand is concerned, and that's how I'm going to review them, as sort of the baseline. Is this baseline as good as the other baselines that have been set by other core brands? So if I'm looking at a Yoyo Factory, I'm going to think about Duncan, I'm going to think about Recess, and whatever Magic Yoyo is doing at the time, or whomever else, and kind of compare price-wise to, does it fit within the price range, and is it a good buy, and is it a good Yoyo? And that's sort of where we go there. I'm kind of, starting to feel like in that range we need to kind of not have any vibe in the $50 range, but some of them have it, some of them don't. Usually it's just a hair, and I think a lot of it depends on the finish of the Yoyo more than anything else. But, it's sort of cutting edge design, but maybe not cutting edge QC at all times, because they are still producing a ton of Yoyos. So that's the second one. The last tier of Yoyo company that I want to talk about really is your boutique or high-end Yoyo brand. Now, I'm talking about your one drops. Although one drop sort of almost fits into that core tier as well. But that's really, the price is really just in the core tier because they own the machine shop. They actually do a lot of machining for those high-end boutique brands as well. But they are in the machine shop. So, very often the one drop stuff ends up being top tier, best you can get, because a lot of love and care goes into their stuff. Boutique, I'm talking about, your G squareds, your 2.6 CLYW, MonkeyFingR, the stuff that really like is a step up as far as like anodization is concerned. I mean, think about how good the G2 swirls are, the MonkeyFingR stuff. I just reviewed the Pixel Ape. Think about how good those swirls and stuff are. Now, when I review these Yoyos, I sort of expect perfection. As long as I didn't buy a glitch or something, I sort of expect perfection. I don't want to see anodization flaws or machining flaws or anything. You're not getting a deal most of the time on these. You're gonna pay full price because a lot of care is going into these. I know Jake particularly, he throws Yoyos away. If a Yoyo comes out that doesn't meet his standards, he throws it in the garbage. There is sort of that level of wanting to hit perfection, especially at the absolute top, which is where like G squared would be. There's that like level of perfection, both in like, making the absolute best colorways possible, and also having glass smooth yo-yos that are on the cutting edge of design, that just sort of play amazing and are super smooth and just are, you know, great art pieces as well as super amazing yo-yos as well. So that's sort of like the upper tier. It's kind of everything. It's everything you want in a yo-yo. However, a lot of times these upper tier yo-yos are very expensive. They hit the like $110, $112, $135 range for like a monometal. Now, they're worth it because a lot of time, a lot of QC, a lot of care goes into these, and you know, they have very elaborate colorways, very elaborate swirls, and a lot of times they're really more collector's pieces than they are player's pieces. I kind of feel like that middle core range is very much like the player's piece, but like that upper crust is sort of very much your very collector's piece, especially the really elaborate splashes and swirls and what have you. So that to me really is kind of like the third tier and kind of the tippy top. Now, I don't do as many of those yo-yos. I don't own as many of those yo-yos because they're kind of expensive, and you know, I can't bring that many in here. And I also kind of tend to not play them as much. I don't take them out when I go places. I try to play them just in my house over my carpet, rather than take them anywhere that's going to get them beat up. You know, like I said, I have a ton of one drops though, because one drop sort of fits into, like, they're a little more expensive than the core brands sometimes, but for that little bit more, you get so much like better yo-yo, in my opinion, a lot of times. And so the one drop stuff tends to sort of be my go-to, because it's like, well, I like them 100% of the time, and they sort of fit into that like boutique, high-end, cutting edge, not necessarily cutting edge as far as the designs are concerned. They just make fun yo-yos for the most part, but you know, they sort of butt into that like high-end range while still being pretty affordable. So that's why I have a lot of one drops, because they're sort of everything I want in a yo-yo company. But you know, the boutique stuff I feel like is very good, and it needs to be like top tier perfect. I don't think I've reviewed a boutique yo-yo that I haven't been like, oh no, this is perfect, because pretty much they all have been. So that's really good. Like, the consistency is great in a lot of those like boutique brands, and they do a really good job. Even if you get like either the G Squid, like the Glitch or a Fool's Gold or something like that, even those tend to be really high quality and really good yo-yos that you know, end up costing a little more than the standard B grade would, but end up playing pretty much 99-98% as well as the A grade would have. Maybe usually they're just like flaws that you can see, like flaws in the splash or something, which doesn't usually bother me. I know it would bother some collectors, but you know, to get a few bucks off and maybe not feel as bad about playing it, maybe a visual flaw isn't such a bad thing. But that's gonna do it for me today, guys. Those are my 3 tiers of you know, yo-yo brands, and sort of how I approach them when I go to review them and when I go to review the yo-yos. That's just kind of the first like glaze over what I try to do. Now, if it's a good yo-yo, it's a good yo-yo, and most companies make good yo-yos that spin. But if you want something a little bit more, maybe you got to look at the boutique stuff. But if you're happy with your core yo-yos that are just going to be on the cutting edge of sort of where players want them to be, because they're designed for players, you know, the core brands are very good. Or if you're on a super budget and just need something to beat around, you know, there's always that option as well. I like to have sort of a variety in my collection, because sometimes I'm going somewhere where I might beat up a yo-yo. You know, you got your everyday, try not to beat it up, but if it happens, it happens. Core level yo-yos that you practice and learn new tricks with. And then the upper tier, high-end boutique stuff that just looks amazing, and it looks as amazing as it plays and feels. So that's it, guys. That's the 3 yo-yo brands, the 3 kinds of yo-yo brands. That's going to do it for me today. Make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I do yo-yo videos every day. I'm always talking about something. But thanks for watching, guys. Cheers to you. Delicious. And I'll see you next time.